Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Anomalous Realities. We have had an interesting week, and tonight we bring back, of course, as always, our producer, Patrick. How are you doing tonight, Patrick?
I am fine, thank you, Nita. How are you doing?
Wonderful. I'm doing pretty good. We have a new pet in the house. As of today, my daughter has a Siberian Husky that she's brought in, and it's actually a pretty toned down animal for a husky because they're usually kind of really hyper and stuff. But he's actually really sweet so far. So yeah, it's going to take time to get acclimated because we have a much smaller dog that the husky is wanting to dominate right now. But other than that, yeah, it's going pretty good. Also in studio with us tonight, we have Melina. Hi, Melina. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Great to be here. Thanks.
So how was your week?
Oh, it was great. My husband got a job, and he's been looking for a really long time. So
wonderful.
That's like my high point of the week.
I'm sure. Yeah. And of course, as always, we have Marky with us in the studio. Marky, how are you doing tonight? Or actually,
Good
I should
evening.
say this morning. It's kind of morning for you, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's 1 a.m. here now, but doing well, thank you, and interested in tonight's main subject, I guess.
Yes, very much so. And so if you want to let our listeners know how they can call in to talk to our guest tonight.
Of course, yes. If you wish to get in touch, you can call in via Skype by calling the contact Freedom Screen 2 or our producer CatRock97, or you can call 310-421-4053 or Skype number 337-335-0085. And as always, we're happy to hear from you.
Oh, wonderful. And yes, we're definitely looking forward to any questions that our listeners have for our guest tonight. And speaking of which, our guest tonight is a author of several books. And these books are actually information that has been, I guess, given to him that he is relating to the world from his spirit guide. So tonight we have Garnet Schulhauser with us, and his books are Dancing on a Stamp, Dancing Forever with Spirit, and Dance of Heavenly Bliss. Welcome to the show, Garnet. I am very anxious to hear all about your spirit guide and the messages that he's brought.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Lenita. I'm quite happy to be on your show and looking forward to the next little session in terms of telling people about my books.
Yes, wonderful. Now, what events do you have coming up soon?
I'm speaking at the Galactic Wisdom Conference, which is in Olympia, Washington, from June 10 to 13. It's put on by Ted Marr, and so I'm looking forward to that conference. And I have several more radio shows scheduled, and I always continue to schedule more radio shows. All that information you can find on my my events page on my website.
And that is garnetschulhauser.com?
That's right, yes. And that's not easy to remember, Lenita. So if they dial or if they Google Dancing on a Stamp or Dance of Heavenly Bliss, they will find my website, and then there's lots of information there about what I'm doing and where I'm going to be appearing, and lots of stuff about my books as well. So that's a good source of information.
Okay, excellent. Now I want to get started tonight with finding out about kind of how you met your spirit guide initially. That story, if you would like to share it with us, I'm really curious as to how this came about. It was covered a little bit, but I really kind of want to know more about that and what that was like.
Well, it's really quite an amazing experience. It was back in 2007, Lenita. I was still practicing law in Calgary, and I was just going for a stroll one sunny afternoon in May, when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a homeless man just jumped out in front of me. And he looked like a typical homeless man with a long stringy hair and a scraggly beard and dirty slept-in clothes. But there was something amazing about this guy, something very different. So instead of doing my usual tactic of doing a quick sidestep and going around these people who often stopped me in the past, and they were often panhandling for money, this guy was different because he had these amazing, sparkling, dazzling blue eyes. And that I felt like he was looking right into the the depths of my very being, right down to the depths of my soul.
Wow.
And I sensed, I'm not sure how I knew it, but I sensed that he knew everything about me, everything I'd ever said or done in my life, all my hopes and aspirations, all my fears and anxieties, and even my deepest and darkest secrets. And I didn't know how he would know this because we'd never met before. I've never seen this
Right.
man before. But I didn't feel violated because he was sort of, laying me naked in front of his gaze. Because at the same time, he was sending me this amazing gush of pure, unconditional love that was just infusing my whole body, my whole being, with an amazing sense of peace and security and well-being. So it was a wonderful feeling. So I just stood there like a deer caught in the headlights. I was like, I was in a time warp. I don't know how long I stood there, but I was quite enjoying this gush of love that was coming from this homeless man. And then he broke the spell by saying to me, "Why are you here?" And then he quickly disappeared into a nearby store. And when I finally collected my wits, I decided I had to go in the store to find him, find out who he was,
Mm-hmm.
and his whole story. Like, why did he stop me? So I went into the store, looked around, couldn't see him anywhere. Went back out onto the street, walked up and down for 10 or 15 minutes, hoping to spot him, but he had basically disappeared into thin air. Wasn't anywhere to be seen. So the very next day, I came back to the same street at the same time of day, hoping to spot this guy.
Right.
And I walked up and down for about 10 or 15 minutes. I was about to lose hope when I finally spotted him sitting all alone on a bench. So I walked up to him and I said, "Who are you? And why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey." And so that was the beginning of a dialogue that I had with this man that went off and on for the next several months. And
Mm-hmm.
I found out his name was Albert, and he was actually one of my spirit guides in disguise. And he
Wow.
said, he said that I was the only one who could actually see him in physical form as the homeless man, so that if other people had been passing by the street that day,
They would
they would
have
have
thought
seen
you were
me sitting on
crazy.
the bench all by myself. Yeah, they wouldn't have seen him.
You-
It wasn't apparent to me, but he says I'm the only one who could see him. And I said to him, and so the first three meetings I had with him, he showed up in physical form as the homeless man, and he was really a physical form because I could reach out and
Right.
touch him. He was very solid. He was just
Huh.
like any other person.
Yeah.
And after that, he didn't show up. He didn't manifest himself physically any longer, but he just was a voice in my head. We communicated by telepathy. So
Right.
that's how most of our conversation was after that, was by telepathy. And when I said to him, "Well, why did you show up as the homeless man initially?" He said it was his way of easing me into the conversation, because hell, he's just started talking to me out of the blue as a voice in
Right.
my head. I likely would have thought I was losing my mind. And so
Right.
this was his way of getting me into the conversation. And so then once he started communicating by telepathy, I recognized his voice. I knew who he was. And I felt very comfortable. And I knew that I wasn't going crazy and that this was my guide talking to me. So it was a very clever way for him to sort of ease me into the whole dialogue.
Wow. That's just amazing. It makes you wonder, when you see other people that kind of are talking to themselves, perhaps they are speaking with their spirit guides and they think that, the person is physical, but no one else can actually see them, so they think they're crazy. This could probably happen, I think, more often than people realize. That's something I think people need to take into consideration. People are very quick to judge others. That's kind of common in our society today, but maybe this will make people think a little bit more. So the first book, what are some of the messages that you brought forth from Albert in the first book?
Well, he had some somewhat startling revelations. Startling in the sense of my background was I was raised as a Roman Catholic, and so I
Mm-hmm.
knew what the church taught me about life, death, and the afterlife, and God, and so on.
Right.
And so his revelations, a lot of his revelations, flew in the face of what Christian holy men have been preaching for centuries. And so he basically said, okay, first of all, we're all eternal souls. We live forever. There is no death. I mean, when we have a physical death on earth, that's just a movement from the physical plane back over to the spirit realm. So there is, we live forever. And in terms of, I kept on asking myself over the years, like, not only who am I, but why am I here? Like, what's my life's purpose? What am I supposed to be doing
Mm-hmm.
here, really? And he says, well, we came here, every soul came here, chose by their own free will to come into a life on earth, to incarnate in a human physical form. we decided to do that because incarnating on the physical plane is a way for us to learn and experience things that aren't available in the spirit realm, so that we can grow and evolve as a soul. So it was entirely our choice. And in fact, we chose the major details of our lives before we came here. We prepared a life plan. The life plan sets out the major aspects of our lives, like the place we're going to be born, the first language we'll learn, our names, the identity of our parents and siblings and grandparents and other relatives and people who will play a major role in our upcoming lives. So we plan all this out, and we do it with the cooperation of the other souls who will play a major role in our lives, like the souls who will be our parents and our siblings and our spouses and coworkers and other people who will be important in our lives. And so it's a cooperative effort. You have to agree to be part of their life, and they have to agree to be part of your life. So once you get that planned out, then you go ahead and incarnate, and you plan this very carefully so that you can encounter challenges, learn lessons that you need for your evolution. So you choose what you think you need, and then you go ahead and you become born into a human body. The major challenge that you face on Earth is that you're not allowed to remember what's in your life plan, or that you even have one. And you're not allowed to remember where you came from. You're not allowed to remember your previous lives on Earth. And that's all by design, to make it more of a challenging environment, which is why the Earth School is one of the most difficult schools, in the universe, according to Albert. And so you don't remember why you came here, and you have free will to take actions. And so you're very often going to stray off of course. But Albert says that's not to be, that shouldn't be a worry for anyone, because that's just a natural part of being a human on our planet, is we'll stray off course because we don't remember where we're supposed to be going. So that's sort of why we're here. The other sort of starting revelations that he made to me was that, a lot of religions, including the religion I was raised with, tells us that God is sort of the supreme being who manipulates and controls events on Earth, who put us all here for his own purposes. And when we die, we'll be appearing before him again for judgment. He will pass judgment on us, and if we've been good, we get to go to heaven. If we're bad, we go to an awful place called hell. Well, Albert says that's all wrong. He says that God, or what he refers to it as the source does not make rules for us to follow, does not manipulate or control events on Earth, and does not judge us when we die. There is no punishment. There is no hell. That's just an invention of a lot of the religions that we have on our planet. And so that's a very major deviation for what I was taught when I was growing up. But it really rang true to me. It really felt good in my heart. And when he said it, because he's such a wise and compassionate soul, I just immediately latched onto it and said, yes, that makes sense. I feel comfortable with that, Albert. And thank you for clearing that up for me, because those are sort of some of the major questions that have been roiling through my mind over the years. And he came, on the scene, answered them all with clarity, with wisdom, and I just knew immediately that what he told me was the truth.
Well, we can sense truth on a deeper level when we hear it. It's almost like an instinctual and an instant recognition of something when you hear it. You just instantly know. Man created those rules of religion as control, as a way to control people. That was done a long time ago, and I'm sure Source didn't want anything to do with that. I think that is one of the biggest challenges that we have, is that big veil that we get pulled over us, when we come in here, because we don't know what we're supposed to be doing. And we stray, but every experience that we have in life is going to go into that well of knowledge that we have beyond. That part of us is beyond. Now, has Albert, has Albert ever mentioned that there is part of you that is always kind of with Source, and that only part of you is in the physical?
No, he's never mentioned that. And I've heard that before from other sources, Lenita. And Albert has not mentioned that. It doesn't mean that it doesn't happen, but he tends to explain things to me in very simple terms that I can easily understand and pass on to other people. So he has not mentioned that. I have not asked him that. But he clearly says that, of course, we're all constantly connected to source. We never lose that connection, no matter where we are. We are always constantly part of the source, connected to the source, connected to each other and everything else in the universe. So we're all sort of part of the one. But one of the things he did say was that every night when we sleep, he says our souls will temporarily leave our physical bodies when we're sleeping and go back to the spirit side to reconnect with our guides, reconnect with other spirits, and sort of take a reading of where we are so far, and sort of we get a pep talk from our guides in terms of you've had a rough day, wake up tomorrow morning and things will be better, and look at it as a sort of a new awakening. And so we get that every night. We're not typically allowed to remember those travels, but he says that happens every night. And so and we get a lot of help from our guides. Like Albert is one of my guides, and his direct communication with me, Lenita, the telepathic communication is very much of a one-off thing, because most people don't get to enjoy that. And he did that with me so that I could clearly hear his answers and write about them. He wanted me to clearly understand what he was communicating. But most people, all people have guides, and all people get messages from their guides. But most of the time, they're very subtle messages. There's like flashes of intuition, whispers in your mind, gut feelings, coincidental events, things like that. And they're all too easy for us to miss them because we're so busy with the day-to-day activities of our lives. We could quite often just don't even hear them, don't pay any attention to them, don't recognize them for what they are. So it's quite a challenge for us to become better listeners. And what he says is that the obvious thing is, of course, learn to quiet our minds through meditation, so that we can sort of become better listeners and be better able to hear what our guides are trying to tell us. And they're like our coaches. They're trying to steer us down the right path to follow our life plan, because they know what's in our life plan. So to the extent that we can hear their messages, we'll be, stay more on track in terms of our life plan. But that's not easy to do. It's very difficult for most people.
Now, did after you met Albert, did you remember? I mean, did it like strike a memory, or did it become familiar? Like, did you recall him giving you messages in dreams prior to your physical meeting with him? Was there any familiarity? Did you kind of like suddenly go put things together and go, "Oh, he's been talking to me. I just didn't realize it"?
No, actually, no. I don't recall any previous contact with Albert in dreams or otherwise. And I'm sure he had been sending me subtle messages, but none of it sort of it didn't ring a bell with me. And so it seemed like to me this is the first time I saw this guy. He did say that, of course, he had been part of my life planning before I was born, and he and I had lived a number of other lives on Earth in previous incarnations, and he described a couple of those to me. But when I saw him on the street, there was nothing that, the bell didn't go off. I didn't say, "Oh, here you are. I remember you from other episodes." It was sort of like a first-time experience for me.
Okay. Now I want to skip forward to your second book, Dancing Forever with Spirit. This one, you kind of went into more about your astral travel. And this is something that I've actually had feedback from my listeners that they really want to know more about. So if you could kind of help them out and just kind of give some basics on how the travel initiated and how it first happened, how he brought you into the astral realm, things like that.
Yeah, well, it was after I was just putting the finishing touches on my first manuscript, and Albert disappeared out of my life for a little while. And all of a sudden he appeared back, but in a very different sort of venue. I woke up one night in my bed, and I could see this ghost-like ethereal figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom. And so I didn't know what it was. And when it moved closer to me, I could see it was my old friend Albert, but he was in astral form. And so I said, "Hi, Albert, what brings you here this time?" And he said, "I'm here to take you on a series of astral trips, out-of-body adventures, because I want to take you to the spirit side, to other places in the universe. I want to show you other things on our beautiful planet, so that you can write about what you see and hear in your second book." And then he literally reached out and he grabbed my astral hand, pulled my astral body out of my physical body. I turned around and looked, and my physical body was still lying sound asleep in my bed. And so there I was in astral form, first time that I can remember ever being in that form. And then he said, "Follow me." And he just took me by the hand, and we rose up through the ceiling, up through the clouds, and we hovered for a couple of minutes above our very beautiful planet. Our planet is really incredibly beautiful. It was a breathtaking scene for that altitude, which I'd never seen before, obviously. And then he said, "Follow me," and he led me through a shimmering doorway into the spirit side. And when I crossed the threshold, I immediately found myself in an incredibly beautiful meadow. It had lush green grass, tall, majestic trees, and wildflowers that were resplendent in like 1,000 different colors, with amazing perfume wafting up. And so then I followed him on a path, a stone path. We went up a low hill, and at the top of the hill, I could see a group of souls waiting for me at the bottom. And as we got closer, my heart skipped a beat because I recognized who they were. They were my mother, my father, my brother, my grandparents, and various aunts and uncles who had already passed over from the earth plane. And also, to my delight, running from behind the group towards me at a fast gallop was my little dog, Oscar, who had passed away 10 years before. And his little tail was wagging his whole body as he came to greet me. And it was just an amazing welcoming party to welcome me to the spirit side. It just reaffirmed what Albert had told me all along, is that he said all of my loved ones that had passed away before me were alive and well on the spirit side, doing very well. And he said they'd be there to greet me when I crossed over myself. And there they were. This was like a preliminary preview of what happens when I finally physically die on this earth plane. And so it was an amazing welcoming party. The only misgiving I had initially was I was concerned about my mother, not because I didn't love her dearly, but because she was a very religious lady when she was living on earth. And my first book was not kind to the Catholic Church. And so I thought, I wonder if she's going to be disappointed in what I had said in my book. And she allayed my fears by wrapping her arms around me in a warm hug and saying, "It's all okay." She said, "If I was still living on earth, I wouldn't be happy with you about what you wrote in your book. But now that I'm on the spirit side, I can see the whole picture, and I agree with everything you said. So keep up the good work." So that was a nice relief, and it was just an amazing experience to meet this group of relatives who already passed on.
Oh my goodness, that is amazing. Now, I just want to throw this in there real quick, but you said you rose above the planet. There's been this whole group of people that keep trying to think that the Earth is flat. Now, what did the Earth look like when you were above it?
The Earth is definitely a globe, a sphere. There's no question it's not flat. And I as I was sort of hovering there with Albert, I could just watch it rotate around, and it's absolutely clearly a globe. No question about it in my mind, and that has been reaffirmed many times after that with my astral travels, because a number of times Albert would pick me up and we sort of scoot across, float up and then sort of move across the earth around the globe to various other places that he wanted to show me. So no doubt whatsoever, it's a globe.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned in your book that you had visits to the Akashic Records. How did that go, and what was that like?
Well, the Akashic Records, as you know, they hold the records of every life that's ever been lived anywhere in the universe. And so this was just sort of a unassuming building. We went into one of the viewing rooms, and in the middle of the room was this large holographic globe. And when we first walked in there, inside the globe, it was swirling with white and blue vapors, sort of in a random pattern. And then Albert did his magic. He knew how to work this. And so then he would do something, and the globe, the scene would change. It would become a crystal clear scene of something that he wanted to show me. It'd be like watching a 3D movie. So it was very, very vivid, very clear. And he showed me a number of things. He showed me some episodes from a few of my previous lives. He showed me a chapter from what he called The Secret Life of Jesus, where it was really a scene from the wedding scene where Jesus and Mary Magdalene were celebrating their marriage, which of course is something that the scriptures say didn't happen, but it actually did happen. And so I saw a number of different things in the Akashic Records. It's really quite interesting. And he, I could have stayed there forever, basically looking at all my previous lives to see what I did.
Sure.
But Albert had his own agenda, and he said, when you cross over, you can come here as often as you want, stay as long as you want. You can look at not only your own lives, but the past lives of every other soul that you're curious about. So it's really quite an amazing experience, and it's sort of all there. Nothing is lost.
That is amazing. It's funny you mentioned that, because when you were describing it, it actually reminded me of an experience I had, and it was very, very similar to that. Although the beings that were with me were, I don't know how to describe them. They were different. But that may have been what I was experiencing at the time, because the way you described it is very similar. And there was a almost a feeling at the time that there was an exchange of information happening. Like I was getting information, but they were also taking my experiences and putting it into this thing that was, I don't know how to explain it, but it was in front of me and it kept changing. It wasn't one static thing. It would change into different things. It was always moving, and it was, yeah, different. But I'm wondering if that gets updates as we go into the astral realm. Does it update the information, and do we take information from it as needed for what's coming up in our lives? Did you experience that at all?
Well, I think it's instantly updated. I think in terms of,
Yeah.
of the ongoing lives that that are still happening,
Okay.
and of course, we have to be careful when I'm saying past lives, future lives, and so on. On the spirit side, there is no linear time.
Right.
There's no
There's no
past,
time.
past or future, just a present, which is hard
Mm-hmm.
for us to sort of understand because linear time is so predominant on our planet. But anyway, so I mean, all past lives and all future lives happen at the same time, but you
Mm-hmm.
experience them sequentially. So it's like a sequential concurrence. So really hard for us to grasp that, but that's how it
It
happens.
really is. Yeah.
But yeah, you can. But I wouldn't, because I'm experiencing my life sequentially. They would not allow me to view any of my so-called future lives. I could only see the ones that already happened, and that's to allow us, in terms of our incarnations, we experience our lives sequentially, so that a life we had in the 15th century appears to us to have happened before a life in the 18th century, and that's by deliberate design, so that
Right.
we can, each life we can take the experiences and the wisdom we gained and build on that to plan our next life, and so our lives keep
Mm-hmm.
on one after the other. They build on the wisdom and the lessons that we've learned. So that's
Yes.
how we experience things, but in a real sense, all lives happen at once.
Isn't that fascinating? And it's really hard for people to kind of grasp that concept. So difficult. You mentioned that there were other planets that there were other life forms that made the shift to the new Earth. Can you talk a little bit about that and what it was like?
Yeah, one of my trips, Albert took me to, well, the background to that is that I had been told by the Council of Wise Ones, which is the committee of very wise souls on the spirit side, whose job it is to oversee all the incarnations on our planet. And so they had told me when my very first visit to spirit side that they were concerned about where humans were going, and they really pleaded with us to change our ways, to discard our negative emotions, embrace love and compassion, and raise our
Mm-hmm.
vibrations. And the goal is that if we can learn to fully embrace love, we'll raise our vibrations, and ultimately, if we raise them high enough, we can basically ascend to Earth in a higher dimension, a higher vibrational state, which a lot of people call the new Earth. And so, excuse me, to demonstrate the validity of that point, Albert took me to actually visit Earth in a higher dimension, which he referred to as the new
Right.
Earth. And so it was really quite an amazing experience. I met with went into a village there, met with a couple of people who were there. They were descendants of humans who had lived in our plane, eons ago. They had a village in Central America. They were sort of a peace-loving people who didn't have any violence and didn't go to war or anything. And one day they discovered that there was this barbaric race of people moving in on their territory, and these barbarians had weapons, and they constantly waged wars on their neighbors. And so this peaceful village, they sort of reconnected with spirit, and some of their leaders got guidance, and they basically went through an exercise where there was a mass ascension of their people up to the new Earth. And so the people I met with in the new Earth were their descendants. And anyway, this new Earth society is very idyllic. There's no crime, there's no war, there's no violence, there's no negative emotions. They've learned to slow down the aging process and combat disease and injury, and so they all live for several hundred years, and they're all they don't consume animal flesh. They consume only liquid food that, to me, it looked like smoothies, that
Uh-huh.
provides all their nourishment. So they were very happy, and they knew what was going on my Earth, and they said, you really have to encourage your fellow humans to try to raise their vibrations, and someday they too can come here and live among us in peace and harmony. So it was really as Albert said, that's a goal all humans should aspire to achieve, but we can't get there until we match our vibrations with the high vibrations
With
of
the
the new
higher
Earth.
vibrations, yeah.
Yeah, and that can only be done by getting rid of negative emotions and fully embracing love, which is not easy to do because all humans have the flare-ups of negative emotions, and sometimes we let them get out of control, like fear, anger, hate, and that's what causes all the violence, all the murders, all the terrorist acts on our planet, which makes it a very unpleasant place
Yeah.
to live in at times. And so we all have to try to raise our own vibrations, encourage others around us to do the same. And that's so it was really an eye-opener. It just showed you that it is possible for human civilizations to live in a very peaceful and harmonious state without any violence or crime.
Yeah. Melina has a question for you, so I'm going to let her jump in here. Melina?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to where you were talking about linear time and how in the spiritual world there really isn't linear time. Everything's pretty much happening at once. There's only the present. So I was wondering, when people reincarnate back into the world, do they have to incarnate along the linear line? Or let's say if I died, could I reincarnate back into the 3rd century?
According to Albert, we're not allowed to do so, and that's because they intend us to experience our lives sequentially in a linear fashion in accordance with the way we experience things on Earth. And so, no, according to him, you can't incarnate back into a previous time on Earth, but you can, continue to incarnate into the future, as you decide when you're on the spirit side and plan your next lives.
Okay. And how about planets? Do you have to are Earth souls tied to Earth, or are you allowed to reincarnate anywhere in the universe?
Yeah, no, we're not tied to Earth. We can incarnate on any number of the millions and millions of other planets in our universe. A lot of us have already done that before we came to Earth. Some of us may make that our next incarnation. We're certainly not tied down, and we're not tied down into humans. We can incarnate into animals. We can incarnate into other life forms on other planets, and a lot of us has already experienced that. So it's wide open. It's our choice.
So the whole concept people have of this being a prison planet is completely just flat out wrong.
It is wrong. Yeah, Albert says that it's absolutely our choice to incarnate here, and we can quit incarnating here anytime we choose. So if we have a really bad life, a lot of people depending on what they've experienced in their lives, are eager to come back to a life on Earth to try to learn another lesson, to try to make amends if they've wronged people. So most souls are eager to do that. But if you decide that you just had enough of the Earth plane, you can say, okay, I'm not going there anymore. I'm going to stay in the spirit side, or I'm going to incarnate somewhere else. So it's absolutely every soul's absolute right to choose when and where they next incarnate.
I wanted to ask you, you were talking about, the new Earth. Now, if people do raise their vibration, is that something that they could do in the current existence that they're in, or would they have to wait until their next lifetime to go to the new Earth? Would it separate them from everyone around them, or is this something that has to be done to the planet as a whole?
No, it can be done individually, and we can do it right now. Albert says that there have been people over the ages who've actually made the ascension. Like I referred to the group living in Central America a long time ago. They did it as a mass ascension. He says that most people tend to do it individually or maybe in small groups, and it does happen. It's happened all over history. It can happen around you right now. It's just a matter of people just being able to raise their vibration. So it can happen in this lifetime. And if it doesn't happen in this lifetime, you can come back and try it again. So you can have as many chances as you want.
Now, I would think people would be somewhat, leery of doing it in this lifetime, if knowing that not everybody that they care about is ready for it. So they would basically be leaving them behind. Is that something that, has Albert ever mentioned that?
Yeah, he says that is a holdback for some people who actually can make the ascension but choose not to, just because they don't want to leave their family members, people who are dependent on them, they don't want to sort of abandon them, and so they just make a deliberate choice to, no, I'm not going to go to the new Earth this time. I'm going to tough it out on this plane until my loved ones make it through, and then maybe I'll do it in the next incarnation. So it's really your choice, and some people just make that decision.
Now, what advice would Albert give to the general public and the people to be able to connect with their spirit guides, or well, we'll go to the next question, but if they wanted to connect with their spirit guides and they haven't been able to, or they haven't been consciously able to make that connection?
Yeah, there's no magic answer. What Albert says, it's a matter of quieting our minds, and he says one of the good ways is through meditation. And he says there's a number of different ways to meditate. There's been thousands of books written on how to meditate. He says, you know, if you don't know how, grab a book or listen to a CD or whatever, and go through it and find a way that seems to suit you well, that seems to work for you. And then he says you just have to practice and practice. It's not easy. It doesn't come the first time you try it. You have to keep on practicing. And it's a matter of just, clearing the clutter of other thoughts from our minds, because I read somewhere that on average, we all have 50,000 different thoughts that churn through our mind every day. Well, we have to sort of clear the clutter, because, when we're thinking about what happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future, we're not paying attention to the messages from our guides. So we have to try to quiet our minds so we can hear their messages. And it actually, what I'm finding is I can, after meditating for a while, I become better able to sort of glom onto those flashes of intuition, those whispers that I get, and understand where they're coming from, and then try to act on them. So that's really how we can better connect with our guides. And for most people, it's never going to be a direct telepathic communication like I have with Albert, but it's going to be the subtle messages that, once we sort of learn to recognize them, they start to flow more freely, and we become better at understanding what they're trying to tell us.
What most people recognize as intuition, correct?
Yeah, most people get flashes of intuition. They don't always recognize where it's coming from. A lot of times when a brilliant idea pops into someone's mind, they think, oh, am I ever clever? The fact of the matter is that message came from one of their guides. They just don't know it. But it doesn't really matter where you think it came from, as long as you listen to it and then act on it. That's really your guides telling you, this is what you should do. This is a decision that you should make. This is a direction you should be going in. So if you hear it and follow it, then you're on the right track.
Yeah, I honestly, I would agree 100% with Albert on that. I always recommend to people when they want to get in contact with their guides to meditate, because the average person, it's kind of akin, their guides trying to talk to them is kind of akin to like standing in the middle of a crowd of people at a rock concert and trying to hear what the person next to you is saying. They're trying to talk to you, but there's so much clutter going on in your mind because you've got all these thoughts going on that you miss those messages very, very easily.
That's a great analogy, Lenita. Yeah. Actually, I really like that. I'm going to use that in the future, if you don't mind.
Go ahead. So I want to talk about your third book now. Because I don't want to run out of time without covering this at all. You talk about astral trips that you took to meet Gaia. I would love to hear about that, because that just sounds absolutely fascinating. I think there are so many people out there that would love to know what it's like to connect with Mother Earth on a level like that.
Well, it was one of my most interesting trips I had with Albert. And he took me to, we of course, we're traveling astrally, which you can basically do almost instantaneously. He took me to a cavern underneath the North Pole. And there I got to have a conversation with Gaia, the consciousness of Mother Earth. And I was a bit surprised at that, because before that meeting, I'd always thought that our planet, our Mother Earth, was nothing more than a conglomeration of inert molecules, forming rocks and mountains and boulders and rivers and so on. But our planet actually does have a consciousness. Yes. And so I had a conversation with Gaia, and she was a very wise, compassionate consciousness. She was fiercely protective of all of her flora and fauna, everything. She wanted, all her animals, including humans. She wanted all her plants, everything to live in peace and harmony as best they could. And that was really her goal. And she expressed, expressed dismay at the fact that over the last couple of 100 years, humans had become sort of the dominating species of our planet, had become very invasive, sort of taking over large, tracts of her surface, being abusive to animals, polluting her atmosphere, her soil, her rivers, with our pollution. And she was
Yes.
very dismayed at this. And she basically said to me, I want you to go back to warn your fellow humans that if they don't change their ways, it's going to end badly for the human race. And that
Yeah.
we really need to sort of stop the pollution, curtail the pollution. We need to start being more respectful and more compassionate to the other animals that we share our planet with, and we have to stop thinking that this planet is ours to dominate, and that we don't have to pay any regard to the other creatures who are on it, and we can
Hmm.
just do what we want. She says that's the wrong attitude. If we continue our ways, it's going to end up very badly for us, and she didn't want that to happen. She's not vindictive about humans. She loves us as much as she loves her other animals. She just wishes that we could live in peace and harmony and not be so abusive. So it was an
Yeah.
amazing conversation, very heartfelt message coming from Gaia, and it really sort of opened my eyes to a whole new awareness about my beautiful planet called Earth.
Yes. Yes. Most definitely. I've actually, I think I've mentioned more than a few times, and it looks like we're kind of starting to get to a point where people are actually starting to be more aware of the damage that they're doing. They're trying to be mindful of the choices that they make in regards to Mother Earth. They're trying to be more supportive. We have a good number of people that are actually waking up and getting to this, but it's not enough yet. And I think I've said more than one time that it's going to come to a point if we don't change something soon where she's just going to kind of shake us off like a dog shakes fleas off its back, just kind of scratch the itch and here's a big earthquake. Get rid of a few of them. Here's a volcano. Get rid of some more of them. These little things, I don't think people understand that Mother Earth is a consciousness and that she's doing the best she can to defend herself right now. And the fact that she even has to defend herself against us is just horrible, beyond horrible, honestly. And it makes me very frustrated. But that's why we're here, isn't it, Garnet? I mean, we are here to bring messages to the people that they need to hear to help fix these problems. That's your purpose, right?
Absolutely, and it is clearly, it wasn't earlier in my life, but ever since I met Albert, of course, I know my mission
Mm-hmm.
now is to spread his message to not only his message, but the messages from Gaia and a number of the other people that I've met, and and from the Council of Wise Ones, and their whole goal is to try to help humans understand that we're on a course that could lead to disaster. We have to change our ways. We have
Yes.
to become more compassionate, loving towards each other, and that's where we need to head. And the message is coming from so many sources through so many channels, Lanita.
Yeah.
You spread the message. I do through my books. Other
Mm-hmm.
radio hosts, other people who write books, and it's really becoming more intense with each year passing. And
It
like
is.
30 years ago, you wouldn't have this radio show, and I wouldn't have written my books because nobody
Right?
would have read them. So
Yep.
we are becoming more awakened. More
Aware.
and more
Yeah.
people are. We're just not there yet. We need to awaken everyone, have
Yeah.
everyone acknowledge what the problem is, and then deal with it and change our ways.
Yes. Very, very much so. Um, Now, if you could ask Albert this, I have a lot of listeners who would like to experience astral travel, but perhaps they're not in contact with their guides, so they don't have, the luxury of having someone pull them right out of their body. Does he have any advice for these people that are out there listening that would like to travel? That would like to experience this, but they don't know of a way to do it right now because they don't have contact with their guides.
Yeah, I've been asked this a lot, Lanita. Albert says, if it was a part of a life plan for a person to enjoy astral travel like I do with
Mm-hmm.
Albert, he says that then it will happen. And if it doesn't happen, it's probably because it wasn't in your life plan, and your guides. It's not something that your guides will try to do for you because it's really not something that you need or that you should experience in your life. So
Mm-hmm.
that's frustrating for people to hear that answer, but there's just
Yeah.
no magic. I wished I could say, here's a magic pill, swallow it, and you'll be able to astral travel. But I can't do
Right.
that, and nor will Albert. So the best I can say is try to connect with your guides through meditation and ask them. I mean, you can always ask your guides for help. Ask them a question, and you can say to your guides, "Look, I'd really like to astral travel. Can you help me?" It doesn't hurt to ask. It doesn't mean that they will give it to you, but it certainly
Right.
doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah, because there are some people that just naturally astral travel from very early ages without even knowing what they're doing. And that's another question is are there ways that people can recognize when they're astral traveling and they don't even realize that they're astral traveling? Are there little signs that they can look for to let them know that they are actually doing more than just dreaming?
Yeah, that's sort of a very much of a gray area, because a lot of times Albert says when we're dreaming, we're actually astral traveling and we think it's a dream. There's nothing, there's no sort of a line in the sand that you can draw to say, okay, if you're on this side, you're dreaming, and if you're on the other side, you're astral traveling. It's very much of a fuzzy area. But the people, a lot of people, when they have been astral traveling, will recognize it as such. If you don't understand, don't really conceive that you are astral traveling, maybe you're not. So it's there's no magic solution to that, Lenita. I'm sorry. I wished I had one.
Okay, that's no problem at all. Now I'd like to ask you about the mythical creatures that you've come across. Can you talk about them a little bit? You've said that you've kind of come into contact with other, different types of mythical creatures. What was that like? And are they related to this plane, or are they on a separate plane?
Well, yeah, it's very interesting. One of my trips, Albert took me to the Pacific Northwest of America, and there in a secluded forest in a small meadow, I met up with the Sasquatch, which is one of Earth's fabled creatures, also known as Yeti and Bigfoot and Abominable
Mm-hmm.
Snowman. And some people swear that they exist. Most people just say they're mythical. Well, I've actually encountered one, and she was
Mm-hmm.
a very nice, spirit. Her name was Xana, and she was about 9 feet tall. She had sort of an ape-like head, and her muscular body was covered in dark brown hair. And we communicated by telepathy. And she says that the Sasquatch have been living among humans on all continents except Antarctica for eons, and
Hmm.
they are very careful to avoid contact with humans because they
Right.
view us to be violent and aggressive. They don't want
Right.
anything to do with us, and so they hide underground, come out at night, and they have what she called a sort of an animal sensitive radar, which allows them to detect humans from many miles away, which is how they've been so adept at avoiding contact, because they can see us coming long before we're even in eyesight. And she lamented the fact that they had to live underground, had to hide. She really wanted to be able to live openly among humans in peace and harmony. But until we change our ways, they're not going to do that. They don't want to be. They don't want to be abused. They don't want to be the subject of our violence, because
Right.
we can be very violent. So they've been in hiding, and she was a very lovely, empathetic creature. They communicated with each other by telepathy, and they really want to live in peace and harmony with Gaia and all her creatures, but they
Mm-hmm.
really feared us. And so it was really a kind of a sad state that we basically forced these people into hiding, just because of the way we are. And then I had another encounter with another fabled creature in Ireland, an Irish fairy. And of course, a lot of people believe they exist. Most people think they're just mythical, fabled
Right.
creatures. Actually, had an encounter with a beautiful little fairy. She's about 3 feet tall. She was just incredibly beautiful, like a tiny, perfect china doll. And she had a story similar to the Sasquatch. She says that the fairies used to roam freely above on the surface, dancing in the rain and
Right.
in the sunshine, until humans arrived on the island long time ago. And at first, they thought humans were just larger versions of themselves, but then
Right.
they found out, to their chagrin, that we're violent and aggressive, just like the Sasquatch found out. And so they
Right.
went into hiding underground again, underground cities. They're not seen very often. They deliberately avoid contact with us. They would really love it if humans could change their ways and learn to live peacefully alongside them, because they'd
Mm-hmm.
really like to live above ground again and dance in the rain and frolic in the sunshine. But they're not prepared to do that yet. So again, two different fabled creatures, very similar stories. We have to keep in hiding from humans because we're afraid of humans, and we're afraid of what they will do to us if we sort of come out in the open.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, honestly. Now, I imagine there are probably other mythical creatures that exist on this earthly plane that are in hiding as well. I think that's something that we really need to seriously consider, because gosh, that's just fascinating. Melina, you actually had an experience some time ago with a similar type of being, didn't you?
Well, it was a Sasquatch, but I want to say it looked more like a werewolf. But it was when I was younger. I was 12 or 13 years old, and I was out with some cousins, and it was a clear night with full moon in the sky, and they lived up in Alpena, Michigan, where there's these pine forests that go on forever. And the moonlight was out that we were out playing out in the woods along the rows, playing hide and seek and just running around. And we were in a group, and we looked up, and about 50 feet away was this creature that stood on 2 feet, hunched over. It had kind of grayish brown hair all over it, pointy ears. I'd never seen anything like it, but I'm sure it was more scared of us than we were scared of it, because
Well, you hope.
with me, I was with my four other cousins,
Mhm.
and so all of us were screaming like banshees, running through the forest, trying
I'm
to go
sure.
home and get away from
Yeah.
this thing. So 4 of us running in a pack with it all by itself. I'm pretty sure it was more scared of us than we were of it.
I'm sure. It kind of draws up, the question on whether or not that some of these other entities, are there other dark mythical entities that actually exist among us as well, Garnet?
That I don't know. Albert
Okay.
did sort of hint to me that there are other fabled creatures or mythical entities other than the
Mhm.
ones I met. And in fact, I did meet one more, which is going to be described in my 4th book. But he said that Gaia has many more secrets up her sleeve, more than we could ever imagine.
Right.
But he wasn't going to show me them all at once. But he did not mention anything about dark entities. The ones
Okay.
I met, the fairy and the Sasquatch, were very empathetic, enlightened entities, very kind, loving creatures. So I don't know if the dark ones exist. I haven't seen them yet, though.
Okay. All right. Now you say you're working on a 4th book. When do you project that will probably be available?
Well, I'm just putting the finishing touches on it, Lenita, and then I have to submit it to my publisher, and then
Mhm.
the publishing process probably takes
Yeah.
around a year or so. So I would expect sometime around this time next year it might be out, but
Okay.
you can't say for sure.
Okay. Do you have a working title? Are you allowed to mention your title at all?
I don't have a working title yet. I usually
Okay.
get that at some point from Albert. I don't have that yet.
Okay.
So I'm just that may be the last thing I put on my
Yeah.
manuscript is the title.
Right. Now, I want to make sure that you get a chance to put out there everywhere that people can, get a hold of your books and your things, because we're looking at probably 2 minutes left. So I want to give you a chance to, mention your Facebook, if you have a Twitter, so people can follow you and pick up your books.
Yeah, the best source of information is my website, which is garnetschulhauser.com. And as I mentioned before, that's hard to remember. So Google "Dancing on a Stamp" or "Dance of Heavenly Bliss." You'll get to my website. There, you can you can read a synopsis of each book. You can download a free excerpt of my books. You can watch a book video, and you can also on my website you can dial into all the previous radio show recordings that I've done. And this is show number 97 for me since June of
Oh my
2013.
goodness.
And
Oh
so all
my
the
goodness.
recordings are there, right back from day one.
Mhm.
Also, there's links to my social media pages like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Google Plus, Instagram, and so you can
Oh,
dial
excellent.
into those and keep up to date on what's going on in my life in terms of my writing career. And I have buy links on my website to all the popular online bookstores where you can just click on them, like Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It takes you
Oh,
right to a
great.
page where all my books are available.
Excellent.
And my website, or sorry, my email address is on my website. So if any of your listeners have comments or questions, they should feel free to contact me directly.
Wonderful. It has been really, really wonderful talking to you, Garnet. And perhaps, maybe when the new book comes out, we could have you back, and talk about some more things. I know there are so many questions I definitely have for Albert, but sadly we have run out of time tonight. So I want to thank you for coming with us tonight. And do either of Melina or Mark, do you have any further comments or things that you want to say before he goes?
Thank you so much for being on. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
Well, thank you
Yes,
for inviting
definitely.
me.
I was going to ask, when did you last see or speak to or meet Albert then?
It was a few weeks ago. It was part of my my last set of astral adventures that I'm writing about in my fourth book. He comes and goes. Sometimes he's away for a couple of weeks. Sometimes he'll show up 2 days in a row. I never know when he's coming, Mark, and he doesn't tell me in advance. But I'm here. And when I finish my fourth, he'll when I'm writing my manuscript, he tends to sort of leave me alone a bit so I can concentrate on finishing it, and then he'll come back into my life again. I don't know if there's more adventures for me after my fourth book. I'm sort of at his beck and call. I just follow his guidance.
Definitely. Right. Well, say hello on our behalf.
I will.
Yes. All right. Thank you for being with us, Garnet. And we are now going to break. You're welcome.
Good evening. This is Patrick English, your producer, and I am here just to let you know that you are listening to Freedom Slips or Freedom's Lips, which is found. That is the URL, freedomslips.com, and that's the URL for Revolution Radio, and that's what you're hearing. We need your help. We need $2,650 in a month's time to pay the bills. This just pays the electricity bills. It helps run the servers. And none of us get paid a thing. And please help us out. If you can give $5 or $10, I see we've come up 100. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Whoever helped out with that, it's appreciated more than you know. We need to be coming up at least $100 every day now. We've got to keep it going, because if we can't make these monthly goals, you won't be hearing anything. And we've been doing this for 5 years and 5 months. So, and I know that I'm looking at the chat room, but the chat room is about 1/10 or 1/100th of 1% of the entire listenership, and so I'm speaking to the entire listener base. And I know we've got a lot of cool people, because I think the chat room is a microcosm of the macrocosm. But for $75, you can get a 1-ounce silver round, which is really cool, because silver is just the deal. It's what the doctor ordered right now. And you can get a jumbo seed pack for $100. And that's 34,500 seeds of 54 different varieties, and they're all non-GMO, and they're non-hybrid, and they're all heirloom, and they guarantee to grow well. They'll keep in your room 15 years, keep in the freezer 25 years. You'll probably use them way before then. And we have also the bullet drive for $50, and that's really a good deal. It contains a lot of good information, like the DVD that comes with the seeds. The archives are $4.99 a month, and you can get a subscription for those. And we also have the Zazzle store, and we have other things. So just go to the home page. If you're in the chat, press the home page button. You won't get thrown out of chat, and you can just kind of shop around and see all the. We give as good as we get. If you're feeling generous, believe me, we do that. It's worth it to us, and you are all worth it to us, and we thank you. And please, please, please help us out. I can beg real good. So, and with that, I'll turn it back over to Shaman Lenny the Elder.
Thank you so much, Patrick. So we're going to continue on the topic of astral projection for a little bit here. Now, I'm actually going to bring some things that were suggested on a very, very common site, which is WikiHow. And it's interesting to find this here, because they're actually suggesting that one of the number one things that you should do as far as preparing for astral projection is to actually do it in the morning. Now, I know a lot of people want to do it at night, but according to them, it's actually much better to practice your astral projection in the early morning hours. You're still really drowsy, but you also have already gotten a lot of sleep. So it puts you in a better state to, I guess, get more relaxed and ready for it, to be able to do the traveling. So first thing to do is to kind of get up and decide that that's what you're going to be doing. And then the second thing you want to do is make sure that your environment is the right environment for astral projection. It's kind of similar to what you'd want to do to prepare for meditation. You're going to want to have a place that's very quiet, comforting. You're not going to want to be disturbed. I guess this is another reason why early morning is probably a great idea, because if you have people in your family, in your house, around you, the middle of the day things get really chaotic and hectic, and it's kind of hard to have time away to be able to do this. So if you set a time, wake up early to try to perform this, it'll help you have a better environment around you to allow a greater chance of success for astral travel. So make sure it's nice and dark. Draw your curtains or shades, or wear one of those little masks that I guess people do. Do you guys ever use those? Because I've never used one of those, but I know some people use those to get sleep. Mark, I could see you using
Nope.
one of those little mask things.
No.
No.
Only time I've ever used one was on plane ride to Germany.
Really?
Yep, that was a long
Well, that's
ride.
a long flight. Yeah.
I had to block
definitely.
everybody out, and it
Mhm.
was something that I could get, and it worked. It helped block everybody.
Did you use earplugs too? Because I would think you
Yes.
need that too. Yeah.
It
Definitely.
was a long ride.
So now, what did you go to Germany for?
I was in the military.
Oh, okay. So, okay. Excellent.
I nursed at launch stool.
See? Thank you for your service. Okay. Next thing you guys want to do is go back into the relaxation mode. You want to lay down, position yourself in a position that's really comfortable for you. You might want to be semi-upright so that you're not as likely to go right back to sleep, because that's not what you want to do. Flex your muscles, loosen them up, and it's a good idea to start with your toes and kind of work your way up slowly. Now, when I do meditation, that's what I do. I will go through each breath in. As I'm breathing out, I relax each part of the body in sequential. So, after like 20 breaths in and out, I've got my whole body completely relaxed. This is a good idea to do also for astral projection. So you want to focus your mind on your breathing. Be very conscientious of it, and don't let other things kind of pop into your head. Don't be thinking about everything that you want to do. Don't even get kind of stuck with the idea of what you want to do once you get into the astral form. Just kind of relax and get yourself into that sort of meditative state. One suggestion is to use some sort of a crystal or stone that you connect with, that oftentimes they will help raise your vibration up and get you ready for that. So it could be any kind of crystal you want to use. A regular quartz crystal. It could be labradorite is actually a really good one to use for that. Selenite. Let's see. I'm trying to think of some really good ones. Amethyst is okay, but it's not necessarily the best for journeying. Now, they're suggesting that you actually hold the crystal over your third eye, which is actually a really good thing. And if you have like a headband or something, this would be a wonderful way to try to hold the crystal in place. If you find that it keeps slipping, just grab a headband and actually use it to hold the crystal to your forehead so that it helps you feel those vibrations. I don't know if you've ever done this, Melina, but I know if you hold a crystal up to your forehead, you can literally feel like a pulsing between. Yeah. Have you done that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's crazy, but you can literally feel that energy. You don't even have to touch your skin and you can feel that energy. It's like a pull there between your third eye and that crystal. So that's a really important step. It's something that will definitely help you raise your vibration and help you easier lift out of your body. Okay, so the next thing is to try to put yourself into, I guess, almost a hypnotic type of state. It's known as a hypnagogic state. And what you want to do is let it get really, really close to sleep, but don't go to sleep. Don't lose consciousness. So you want to be at that very, very edge of sleep, in that state where, well, actually, one of the things that you'll notice is that things start to tingle. you'll start to feel what feels like, vibrations going through your body. It might feel like electricity a little bit. Another important thing, as you're getting close to that sleep point, your body's going to try to check and see if you're asleep. And so it's going to make you itch and things like that. It is important when you get to this point that you don't itch, you don't scratch, you don't move, you don't let your body know that you're still awake, because your mind is trying to, I guess, figure out that you're not ready for that yet, and it wants you to not leave your body until you are asleep. So you want to keep your mental faculties. So you just need to kind of be aware of that, and don't itch, don't scratch. Any sensations that you're getting, completely ignore them as very best as you can. The next step you want to do is to actually, while you're laying there and you're waiting, once you start to feel that tingling, you want to try to visualize projecting your body a little bit out of the physical body. So what you want to do is think about maybe your fingers poking out beyond where your fingers are, or imagining that your feet are extending out beyond the physical body of your feet, and actually try to feel them growing out. And then you want to do the same thing with your arms and something like that. You want to feel your body, visualize it, and actually try to feel maybe your toes curling and uncurling or something outside of the physical body that you have. Once you can kind of achieve that and you've gotten to that point, you want to focus on the rest of your body, like your arms and your neck and your head, and just kind of be really aware of that feeling that you have with them there. Keep your focus, but you want to move your whole body in your mind, not physically. So you want to imagine your ethereal body maybe rolling to the side and just slipping right out of your body. It's going to take a lot of practice. Okay. This is something I've been working on for a long, long time, and it took years before I could do it. And still sometimes I fight with it, because once you get to the point where you're just about ready, and for some people, you can actually imagine your spirit going out the top of your head, like literally coming right out the top of your head. That's a really good thing to do if you're actually sitting up. It works pretty well. The thing is, and this is something I need to warn all of the listeners about, is when you get to that point where you're getting ready to lift out of the body, there is a like an instinct that is just kind of in you initially. And you'll feel this almost the second that you start to rise out of your body that first time. You're going to feel like a rubber band just pulling you right back and just snap. And it's like, oh man, I was right there. I was almost out. And then boom, you're right back in your body. That is a fear mechanism that is with us from birth. And that's something that you have to work through in order to fully release. Not everybody has it. Because like I said earlier, there are some people who start astral projecting from early childhood. But sometimes they don't realize that's what they're doing. And that's why the fear mechanism doesn't work on them. But if you're doing this mindfully, your subconscious is afraid that once your consciousness leaves your body, it might not be able to find its way back. And it tells it that. So you need to reassure, if this happens to you, you need to, when you're in that meditative state, waiting to try to, visually move your ethereal body outside of your physical body, you need to try to also reassure your mind, your subconscious, and say, it's going to be all right. I'm still connected. I can find my way back. Because you can. There's a tether that keeps your consciousness attached to your body even when you're not in your body. So that's something that you don't really have to worry about. But there's an instinct and intuition that will just pull you back. And that may happen for a lot of times until you get really comfortable with that. Melina, have you ever tried doing astral projection?
Oh, yes, all the time. I enjoy. I do almost exactly like you do, and it's when the tingling starts.
Yes.
I'll start vibrating even more, and I'll be able to just roll over and pop right out of my body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually one of those clues that let people know that even if they're not trying to astral project, that tingling is one of those clues that you're about to.
Yep.
That's your little system saying, okay, you're getting ready to leave. You're going to take off. You're going to go and you're going to have a little adventure outside of your body. People often meet on the astral plane. People that are separated by distances. But like you could meet even people that have passed in the astral plane, because in the astral plane, there's no time. So you can actually come across loved ones that, aren't with you anymore. I see my mother-in-law on the astral plane very frequently, and I never quite know for sure, if she's just, coming in a dream, or if I'm traveling to her, or how it's happening. But she's often got messages for me. I think I was talking about this last week with Maureen McGill, and I see her on the astral quite frequently, and I've visited other family members there too. But you can even, if people that also know how to astral project, you can actually meet up and talk on the astral plane, which is kind of cool. Kind of cool. But another thing that you should do to try to, I guess, confirm that you've actually astral traveled is to take a look around you, go to places, and like go visit somebody that you know in real life. Go look around and just make note of something that you couldn't have known unless you actually traveled there. This is one of the best ways that you know for yourself, your own personal well-being, that you've actually traveled somewhere. And then you can confirm it later that you've actually been there, even when, you weren't physically there, you were astrally there. And one of the things that we talked about, gosh, it was a long time ago, but this is one of those things that has kind of been, I guess, talked about a few times. But Melina, I think you'll remember a few times we've talked about shadow people.
Yes.
The idea that some shadow beings may actually be astral travelers.
I believe that too.
Mhm.
Especially the shadow beings that pop up once and you never see them again, and
Mhm.
it's just, there seems to me to be something more about shadow people, and I have never gotten a negative feeling towards them. I haven't.
I have. I definitely have. There are some of them that you just get a bad feeling from their presence, like they're not there for a good reason. I was never comfortable with the ones that would show up when I was very young. I had very frequently that very typical one with the hat,
Mm-hmm.
the tall man with the hat, which is
Yeah.
actually part of our new logo. But yeah, some of them, I think there's multiple types of shadow beings. I don't think that they're all astral travelers. That's the thing. I think some of them are entities, perhaps some that have never even been human, because there are different shapes of shadow beings. But I do think that perhaps the way that an astral spirit would appear to someone who is actually waking at the time when they're visiting them is as a shadow being, because obviously you can't see their full form. But if a person has the perception to actually see an astral traveler, and I don't think everyone does, honestly. But I think if someone has the ability to actually see the astral travelers when they visit, they probably see them as these shadow beings in some cases. I think other shadow beings are very different things. Maybe even
The,
perhaps
the
negative
ones
spirits.
the ones that I get
Uh-huh.
negativity are the ones that change form. They're more
Right.
mist than they are a figure.
Oh,
Do you?
right.
Those are
I
the
do.
ones that give me the unsettling feeling. The ones that move like a fog.
Okay. Well, I've actually had fogs visit me, but not as like shadow form. Um, actually, I shared this on Above Top Secret a couple of years ago. Actually, it was I had a red and a white mist coming to me during the night several times. The red mist definitely scared the hell out of me, and when it was above me, it made me feel like it was there for a very unsettling reason, like it was trying to take me almost. The white mist seemed to be a very protective and comforting, and like I said, like a guardian almost type of entity, the white mist. And that went on for a while, and come to find out, and I had shared this on ATS, but come to find out about maybe a month after I had shared that I was actually very, very close to death at the time when these mists were around me. So I had one of them that was trying to take me, and the other one that was trying to protect me, keep me where I was. But I have anemia that happens back and forth. Like, I mean, it goes where sometimes I'm good for years. Sometimes for no apparent reason, I'm like almost completely out of blood. Like seriously, my hemoglobin was at 6.1 when I went in at that. And I mean, you shouldn't even be below 8. So I was like in life and death borderline zone when these things were coming to me. And when I had to have the next transfusion because of that, I realized because they vanished. After I got the blood, they vanished. I didn't get any more visits from them, haven't had another visit from them again. So I guess they're kind of my warning system to let me know when things are out of whack. But yeah, that was one of those things. But they did not come in shadow form. But you've seen mists in shadow form. Now, can you tell me a little bit about that and, what was going on in your life when that happened?
Well, it was during a time where there was great turmoil going on in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I would see like a figure, a shadow man or a shadow person. And then it would, when it would move, it would dissolve into like a black mist.
Right.
And then go up towards the corner of my ceiling and disappear. And those are the ones that give me the heebie-jeebies. Stick around and face me for a while and wait and see if, I ask some questions and I'm I can handle that, but when you get scared by something and then it takes a form, an ominous form, to exit, that I want to stay away from.
Now, at that point in time, I know this is somewhat personal, but was there a lot of turmoil, like negative energy? Yeah.
Yes.
See, that almost is what it feels like. This dark mist that kind of goes is like it's something that kind of, it's like almost like a negative energy siphon. And so it creates problems and discord so it can suck that energy off of you to feed off of it almost.
And that sounds very much like, the feeling that I get from it too when it does come around. Knock on wood.
Yeah. But yeah, well, I hope you don't get any of those anytime soon again.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay, now I want to bring in Mark, everybody, because Mark is often very silent. He's very anti-woo. So Mark has actually got a couple of stories that he was looking at this week, and this is kind of like his little section that we call Mark's Minutes. So, Mark, would you like to share your weekly story?
Certainly, yes. Well, I just wanted to add a couple of points into the
Go
astral
ahead.
projection stuff.
Okay.
I just wanted to say it's all very interesting stuff. I mean, I can't personally.
Well, maybe you should try it. You might want to try it sometime.
Everybody can learn to astral travel. Contrary to what some people believe, it isn't something that is for a select few, or not everybody can learn it or something like that. Everybody can learn it. It's just about finding the right technique that works for you.
Yeah.
I see. Well, I will keep trying then. I'll put it that way.
All right.
Even things like lucid dreaming, that's quite difficult for me. I don't know whether it's overactive imagination or whatnot, but yeah, the astral travel stuff is very interesting. Of course, I want to visit the Akashic records. Is that what they were called?
Akashic. Akashic. It's also, I mean, in tribal language, it's known as the void. It's like the place that exists outside of the physical, where no time exists, all things happen at once, and all information exists at once. In native cultures, it's called the void. In modern, its popular pop culture name right now is the Akashic record. but they mean basically the same thing, the same reference.
That's it. Well,
Yep.
that's all very interesting, but I don't know if I will personally ever see that. It's intriguing that this is
Yeah.
open and available to all of us, but
Yes.
I have tried in certain ways and failed miserably. But I mean, there are little things like
Trust me,
you say
everybody
about,
fail. I don't know many people that don't fail the first few times. As a matter of fact, some people
I
have to
do
practice
also.
for years before they get to where they can do it.
And I'll still be home alone and think, hey, this is a great time to sit and meditate
Yeah.
or do an astral travel and not be able to do it. The day's not right, something's wearing on my mind. Maybe I ate something too heavy, I don't know. And for just some
That
reason.
actually can affect it too, Melina.
Mhm.
Because your physical body feeling weighted down can actually affect your astral body's ability to leave. So that actually can affect it. And Mark, you were talking about, lucid dreaming. Another technique, and a really, really good technique for lucid dreaming, is to get in the habit when you are, just during the day, in random times, just look around you and actually and honestly say to yourself, is this a dream? Question yourself about this constantly during your waking time. And what happens is you're going to get into a habit of it. And when you're dreaming, you'll do it too. So then when you're dreaming, you're going to look around and you're going to say, is this a dream? And then you're going to start to realize, wait a second, this is a dream. At that point, you can start taking control and controlling what you do and guiding it wherever the heck you want to go with it.
Yep. And that's what I think I need to get back into. And presumably that is good training for trying the astral projection sort of
Yes,
stuff.
it is. It's good practice for that. Yes, most definitely.
Yeah. Well, yes. Cheers. We'll give that a shot.
Yay. Okay, so now I'm interested what your stories are for this week.
Yeah, sure. So, firstly, paranormal activity. Last week I was going to report, although we had Maureen giving readings very kindly for the majority of the show, that a school in Malaysia was apparently affected by a mass hysteria or such after seeing a dark, shadowy figure roaming around their school. And now, no more than 10 days later, a similar report is coming from Peru. Again, mass hysteria, students acting strangely. One student in the Peru school said, "It's disturbing to think about. It's as if someone kept chasing me from behind." It's being deemed locally as a contagious demonic possession or interference event. There's video footage from Peru which shows children in the school who fainted and they're screaming uncontrollably, and there's authorities on site perhaps. And some of the students claimed that they felt as if they were being strangled. So similar to the Malaysian incidents a couple of weeks earlier, doctors, spiritualists, holy men, they've all descended on both schools to perform exorcisms and whatnot. There were reports that the kids had been using a Ouija board in an effort to communicate with spirits said to haunt the school. Now, in Malaysia, one worker at the school joked that perhaps the students had bumped into a jinn. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Jinn. And apparently these are supernatural invisible spirits mentioned in the Quran or Islamic mythology. You ladies probably know more than I do about this. That are said to manifest in animal and human form at will, and they are typically hostile. And when you mentioned earlier about darker spirits or whatnot, this jinn popped up in my mind as maybe they are. It's claimed that they live in a parallel world where they can see humans but remain invisible to us. So just to round that off, a sociologist, Robert Bartholomew, said that these school outbreaks of mass hysteria are textbook, basically, hysteria events, and that Malays are susceptible because of their belief in an array of spirits. And as I said, these two things have happened in recent, one after the other, basically. And it's kind of spooky. They mentioned seeing a shadowy figure, around the halls or whatever, and it's got everyone a bit panicked. I have no idea how true it is and whether the Ouija board thing's connected. You can read if you just Google Peru school mass hysteria. It's right there.
Mhm.
It's a recent story. What are your thoughts on this? How could two similar incidents occur so soon? What's going on? What are shadow people coming out of the woodwork or something?
Well, I've read the story. I actually happened upon the story just a couple of days ago and was reading about it. And it reminded me of like when you read about the Salem witch trials, everybody
How
getting
so?
in, like everybody getting into a furor about something and
Hmm.
it becoming like they say, a mass hysteria.
Right.
That's what
But
it reminded me of.
here's the thing, though. There has to be something that was a catalyst to create the mass hysteria. There had to be something that people were seeing or experiencing that other people, attached to. So there had to be some sort of source for the beginning of this. So the question is, what was the first thing that triggered this whole thing, if it was mass hysteria, if it wasn't something legitimate? However, when there's use of a Ouija board, you really have a high chance of something coming through. We just I mean, you can get messages from spirit in lots of different ways, but Ouijas are a more potent gateway opener. And once you open that gate, if you don't know how to close it, it becomes very, very dangerous. This is something that really disturbs me because they're marketing these things to children like Barbie Ouija boards, and
Yep,
it's
it's a
so
toy.
wrong. Let's summon demons for our slumber party. No. I don't even believe in demons in that sense. However, I do know that there are native entities that are not in physical form that I think people perceive to be demons. And these entities are very malicious. They can be physical, and they can take possession of a person's body. Now, I'm not exactly sure how the whole possession thing happens. I honestly don't understand that fully, but there are certain things I think that can weaken a person and make them more susceptible to allowing a spirit to have influence over them, over their thoughts, over their physical actions, even short of like a full bodied possession. But there are things that people can do. And I think substance use opens people up to be more susceptible. And this can be any type of substance that actually weakens the mind and your ability to think clearly. So if there were if there were a lot of kids on medications that might have been mood altering, things like that, that might have actually opened them up to spiritual influence, to where they may have seen things that other kids may not have seen. So there's a whole lot of things that could have been in play there. So was it just hysteria created by nothing and it just went out of control? Or was there actually some sort of a spiritual influence happening to some of these kids because they were weakened, perhaps by, Ritalin or some other drug like that, takes away certain aspects of their ability to think for themselves?
It's
Well,
a good.
that's it. What is the source? But I just wanted to add, you mentioned earlier that when it came to shadow people, sorry to cling to that
Uh-huh.
part of this story, but
No.
you said, you mentioned like a tall figure with a hat or something. One of
Mm.
these students says a tall figure with a beard. So again, that's
Huh.
kind of spooky how it sort of seems a bit similar
So
to
this
the.
actually, yeah. Well, that would actually suggest a spirit. I mean, in that form, that would definitely suggest a spirit, which means that this is actually not the first time. I mean, a couple of years ago, there was a story about a school that had chronic problems with a spiritual haunting in the school itself. And I wish I could remember where that was, but it seemed like it was maybe South America as well,
Yeah,
somewhere
I
down there.
remember reading, and the
Hmm.
girl died, didn't she?
Oh gosh, I hope not. I don't think I recall that tidbit of it, or maybe it's a different story, but
It
I
might be a
certainly
different.
hope that didn't happen.
I remember reading a story, and it happened a couple of years ago,
Hmm.
somewhere in South America, where she was. Her and some friends were at school, and they were playing with the Ouija board,
Uh,
a homemade one,
Homemade
where
one.
yeah,
Those are the worst.
and they used a glass turned upside down as the scryer. Well, they said that they got busted by a teacher. A
Hmm.
teacher come in and busted it up before they could properly say goodbye to the spirit, and they saw black smoke coming when the teacher took the planchette, which was this
Oh,
glass away.
right.
They saw the black smoke come out and into the girl's nose. So they saw they actually saw the black smoke go up into the girl. The girl become possessed, and after that, the parents said that all kinds of strange things started happening in the house. Her picture burst into flames on the wall, uh, and she deteriorated over time and passed away.
Oh my gosh. That's horrible. That's scary too, because I know I've shared this with you before, Melina, about the most dramatic Ouija experience I had ever had, and we had actually made our own board because we had normally, gosh, when we started using this, we were at another friend's house, and her parents had this Ouija down in their basement, and they had a pool table down there, which was the reason we were down there to begin with. But she brought out her Ouija, her parents' Ouija, and she was told not to use it. So of course, we wanted to use it because their parents said no. But on this occasion, after multiple uses and lots of very unusual coincidences, I guess you could say, we were at a different friend's house, and we all decided we wanted to use the Ouija. So we created one. We made one out of paper, drew out everything, on that, and we actually used a glass. It wasn't a glass though. It was like one of those we used to call them like candy dishes or something, but it was a small heart-shaped little glass thing that you would put like your gum in, when you took it out of your
Mm-hmm.
mouth at night or something like that, to that extent. It was about 2 inches, maybe inch and a half or 2 inches big, and we used that as our planchet. Um, no smoke. And I kind of wonder about the whole smoke going into someone, because that kind of reminds me of Supernatural, and maybe they, saw that on the show and just kind of incorporated that into that. That almost suggests, that maybe, they just saw something and they took it and put it in the story. So that worries me a little bit to the validity of the story, just because I've never heard, of someone physically seeing smoke going into someone in that manner before. That isn't to say that it didn't happen. It's just that having it on a very popular television series like that, it kind of takes away from, my ability to take it too seriously to some extent, but not fully. So yeah, but that's very frightening, because the homemade one was, I guess, the catalyst for the most dramatic experience that we had in actually having a spirit threaten us. Thankfully, none of us were hurt. Um, so that went, but after that night, we all swore we would never touch one again, because the thing about this event that was so dramatic was that when it got out of hand and it started moving towards one of my friends, we all lifted our hands off of it and it continued to move without us. And that's when one grabbed the window and the other one grabbed it and threw the planchet thing, the glass dish, out the window. And then we burned the paper and tried to make sure her mom didn't smell the smoke. But yeah, the homemade ones are the most powerful, because I think when you are creating something to that extent, you're creating a communication tool, but you're also infusing it with your energy and your intent. And intent is 90% of why this works. Focusing your intent into something is what gives it power. So in the situation where you have kids creating their own Ouija boards, it's dangerous. And if I had known then what I know now, I would have never ever done it. Never done it. But, hindsight's 2020, and we all kind of learn through these experiences, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's how we learn. So yeah, Mark.
So is Ouija board then just completely negative? I mean, because there's contacting spirits
Yes.
that is good. Why is a Ouija
Um,
board the bad way of doing it?
well, it's a way that they get trust in people because, like, what they start to do in the beginning is they will actually tell you things that they couldn't possibly know. They will be accurate and they will predict the future, and they can tell you things that nobody else could know. But they do that to get your trust. Once they
They
have your trust,
First time I ever used a Ouija board, I was 12 years old, and they told me that my husband's initials would be CZ.
Mhm.
At the time, the only person I knew in my class was I won't was a guy by the name of Zimmerman, but his first name was totally different than it started with a
Right.
C. But when you're 12 years old, what do you think of? You think of the boys you know in school,
Yes,
you know.
exactly.
So fast forward 8 years later, and I meet my husband, and lo and behold, his initials are CZ.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, what are the odds?
Well, they the odds are really staggering because the exact same thing happened to me. And when I was about, I think I was 7, my future aunt, she was engaged to my uncle, asked my cousin and I to help them move some of their stuff into their new place. And one of the things that we were taking in was the Ouija. And so she says, "Oh, this is a game. Would you guys like to play? You can ask it questions and all kinds of stuff." So we're like, "Oh, yay, fun. Let's do it." And so we asked all kinds of questions. And, I wanted to know who I was going to marry. And here's the thing is it actually said my current husband's name, said we would have 5 children, which we do. And at the time, I mean, because you look for people in your life currently thinking, oh, the only person I know that's that is like super older than me, and they're like, there's no way this is going to happen. But lo and behold, I married a man with that name and we have 5 children. All of these things, like I said, they get your trust. Obviously, they have access because you're speaking to something that is in the space that's outside of the physical reality. And this is kind of like their bridge, their ability to communicate with. Um, I've never heard of an instance where someone used Ouija on a regular basis that something negative, something bad didn't eventually happen. I don't know if this is because the spirits that are positive get pushed out of the way by the negative ones once the gate is opened, or if only negative spirits are drawn to using that mode. I'm not sure, but I do know that
Well,
it seems to, I don't know.
if you
Go
go
ahead.
if you go with esoteric geometry and stuff like that, the planchette, which is the triangle, is one of the geometrical shapes that you use to trap a demon. So technically, every time you use, because there's several different types of talking boards. I'm talking about the square box one with the triangular planchette.
Mm-hmm.
That one there is geometrically, sacredly geometrically designed to bring forth demonic entities. That's why
Interesting.
you go for the psychic circles.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd probably be a better way to go about it. And that may have a lot to do on why you only get negative entities. We have a question from the chat room. DG87 asks if astral projection is an out of body experience, is it possible for an entity to take possession of your body when you are astral traveling? And if so, how do you protect your body from being invaded? That's a really good question. Thank you for asking it. It can happen. It's not very likely, but it could happen. But usually your body is tethered, and that's not very likely. There is something that people do when they actually successfully astral project on a regular basis to protect themselves. Is they create a protective circle. Melina, I'm sure you could tell people a method on this because I know you know about this, but they create a protective circle around themselves before they go into the astral realm to keep things from getting into their body while they are out of their body. So yes, It could happen. And yes, there is a way to protect yourself. Melina, could you maybe help out our listeners with that technique on creating a circle?
Yes. First thing you are going to want to do is work on your visualization. I usually visualize blue-white light surrounding my body like a sphere, encompassing my whole body like a sphere. Uh, but it can also be a white light, and if you can only get like a circle around yourself, that's good too, but you work up to where you're kind of sphere yourself into a protective bubble.
Okay. Yeah, I use that method too. But there's also salt circles.
I haven't used
Salt
salt
circles.
circle in years.
You've never used a salt?
No, I've
Okay,
used
you
salt
have.
circles.
Okay.
I haven't in years though.
Okay. Usually when you lay a salt circle down, it needs to be pretty thick and you don't want it to get broken. But then you make a request to each of the directions, north, south, east, and west, and whatever entity guardian that you perceive in that direction to protect you while you are inside that circle. And so you will do that facing each direction once your circle is down. And anything else to add, Melina? Because this is I've never really done.
If you don't know what entities to use, a common go-to are the archangels,
Okay.
Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel,
Okay.
to assign to each quarter, your north, east, west, and south. They're
Or you could do Thor, Isis, Zeus, Athena if you're not religious.
If you're not religious,
right?
Yeah, if you're not ceremonial, then you could whatever denomination you fall under, and you can call on them to look over. But now, are we talking about use this while using the Ouija board, or are we talking about this for astral projection?
This is for astral travel, because this was a question that was brought from one of our listeners in the chat room. They wanted to know about that. So they were talking about, if an entity could possess you while you're out of your body, which can happen, which is why that's how you'd protect yourself, is to create a circle. Now, you could do an energy shield, as Melina said, and that's the way I refer to them. And that is what I commonly use, but you can also do the physical salt circle of protection. And then,
I would say if you're using a Ouija board, you definitely use the salt circle. If you're astral projecting, then I would use the visualization technique.
Okay.
But both work in either cases for both purposes.
Excellent. Okay, Marky, was that the only story you had for us this week? Didn't you have one more?
Yes, I got one more if you'd like.
Yes.
Sure. Okay, so science and technology. Some scientists in America are attempting something that some consider disturbing, to make embryos that are part human and part animal. They hope these embryos could save the lives of people with certain diseases. As such, the so-called chimera embryo could help animal testing to better understand how human diseases occur and progress. It's perhaps their long-term goal to farm animals that have human organs which could be transplanted into terminally ill patients. Some scientists, though, are worried that the creation of these interspecies embryos is a step too far. Stuart Newman, a professor of cell biology and anatomy at the New York Medical College, says, "You're getting into unsettling ground that I think is damaging to our sense of humanity. If a male chimeric pig mated with a female chimeric pig, the result could be a human fetus developing in the uterus of that female chimera," Newman says. And another possibility is the animals could give birth to some kind of part human, part pig creature. I kind of left it at that. You can Google that, embryo human creature, and the full article will be the first thing on that. So I found that fairly interesting. That's sort of hit the discussion the last week. What are your thoughts on that?
Disturbed?
Really? Seriously? This is so disturbing, because this is kind of the the direction that people were going towards the fall of Atlantis. You know, in Plato's writings about it, that was one of the things that was starting to happen. You know, whereas they were breeding humans with animals, and they had all types of. I mean, these are where these old legends come from. You know, like the Minotaur and griffins and things like that. Is cross genetically splicing different species together that were never meant to be cross spliced together. And what kind of turmoil that brings up in a society, because you don't really know what you're going to get when you start experimenting in these ways. I mean, you think about all the movies that came out, all the horror movies that came out in the 50s. This was kind of on that mindset of, you know, messing with things that we really shouldn't be messing with. I know we're always trying to learn more things, but there's got to be some lines at some point that we draw, you know, to prevent us from doing things that can get really out of hand. What are your
You'll hear,
thoughts?
you'll hear me say this all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but scientists are so worried about whether or not they can do something. They
Mm-hmm.
don't stop and ask if they should.
Should. I know. Yeah, exactly. That's one of the biggest questions is, you know, they always want to do everything that they possibly can, but the thing that they need to be taking into consideration is whether or not something should be done. Very, very, very good point. I think CERN is a good analogy of that. You know, we were talking. Wow, gosh, we've talked so many times about the Mandela effect, and I personally think that the Mandela effect is a direct result of CERN. I have a feeling that we aren't even aware of what has happened to our reality and the branches that have gone off as a result of CERN creating little mini universes. I think some of us have gone one way. We come from, you know, the Berenstain Bears universe, and now we live in the Berenstain Bears universe. I remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison, and yet he was recently released from prison in this reality that we're currently living in. There are lots of things that just don't match up to what they used to be, to what we always knew them to be.
So
I guess
does that mean that there's two timelines parallel?
I think there's more than two timelines parallel, honestly. And I've found actually, I've got to write them down sometime, but I've actually found a whole big list of a lot more discrepancies than just those few that we know of. If you pay close attention, there'll be a lot of times when you'll think to yourself, wait a second, wasn't this that before? And
Oh
it's
yeah.
in those moments that you create in your mind an explanation like, oh, I must be remembering it wrong. But when it comes to things like the Berenstain Bears, as they are now, and the Berenstain Bears as they were before, there are certain things that help you know without any shadow of a doubt that you're not remembering it wrong, that something inherently has changed. For a lot of people, one of the reasons that everybody remembers the Berenstain Bears being the Berenstain Bears is because it was spelled EIN, right? And so we didn't know if we should pronounce it Berenstein or Berenstein. Now, if it had been spelled AIN, none of us would have ever wondered that in grade school. We wouldn't have had that question in our minds how we should pronounce it. It would just always would have been Berenstain. But that wasn't for many people the way it was. And so knowing this and knowing that we had this, you know, because this was a popular early reading book, knowing that we went through wondering if we should pronounce it Berenstein or Berenstein tells us that there's no way it could have formerly been spelled Berenstain.
I remember Berenstein. I remember the Berenstein or Berenstein Bears,
Yeah.
not Berenstain.
But that's what everything suggests that it's always been. And here's the thing is that the name of the Bears is also the name of the people. Okay, so the authors are Stan and Jan Berenstein, or as it is now, Berenstain. So somewhere in the timeline, in a different split off in some decision that's happened, or perhaps we're even looking at maybe it isn't CERN, maybe it's time travel. Maybe we're looking at the result of a time travel shift. of something happening from people going back and changing something.
Okay, now here's the question.
Mhm.
Are we on the original timeline because we can remember, or are we on a divergent line because we can
Or
remember?
are we on the
Good
Doc
question.
Brown timeline?
I want to know which line I'm on because I want to know which one might crumble.
If it's different than the one that we're currently remembering, I think we're on the divergent timeline.
Okay, then we're
Yep.
then we're always aren't we always in danger of it crumbling at any time?
Yes. All right, everyone, that is all the time we have for this week. Thank you to all of our listeners for listening. Thank you to Melina and Mark for being with us, and Patrick for producing for us. Good evening, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend.
Revolution.